Asexual reproduction means reproduction without using male and female gametes where one parent is involved. The offspring is identical to the parent. It occurs, for example, when a moth sends up a sporangium and spores are produced. There is no introduction of new genetic material and the reproduction happens over a relatively short time. On the other hand, sexual reproduction involves two parents and the fusion of two nuclei, which are special sex cells called gametes. The offspring are now completely unique, and although it may resemble the parents, it is not the same as either of them, as it has a combination of their genetic material. The reproduction happens over a relatively long period of time.
Sexual reproduction will be more effective at survival in changing environmental conditions because it allows genetic variation so that adaptation can take place.
Bryophytes are the oldest plant group in existence today. Examples of bryophytes are the small plants we call mosses as well as liverworts. Bryophytes do not have true leaves because there is no vascular tissue due to an absence of xylem and phloem. They do not produce fruit and do not have any pollinators. They are able to reproduce asexually and sexually. Bryophytes grow best in moist, cool and dark areas, and so are often found in the shade, on a tree or on a rock. Water is needed for their reproduction because the sperm requires a medium to swim in order to reach the egg so that fertilization can occur. The fertilized egg becomes an embryo that is protected inside the archegonia. The embryo then develops the sporangium, which releases spores into the air, and they are blown away by the wind. If the spores land in a moist area, they can germinate and grow into a new plant. Pteridiophytes are vascular plants that also live in mostly moist, shady and cool conditions. The most well-known example is ferns. They do not produce fruits nor do they have pollinators. They also produce both sexually and asexually. Like bryophytes, they also require water for reproduction as the sperm needs a medium to swim in to reach the egg. Most ferns have fronds, which are big leaves that are divided into leaflets called pinnae. On the bottom side of the pinnae, there are brown sori which contain sporangia. The sporangia produce spores and release them when they are ready. The spores are able to fall straight to the ground to grow as the sori is facing the ground. Once a spore has been released, it will grow into a prothallus, which will produce a male antheridium and female archegonia. The sperm can swim in water to the archegonia, and for this to happen, the prothallus needs water to develop.
Gymnosperms are naked seed-bearing plants like conifers and cycads. They are mostly found in dry or cool habitats, and plants like the conifers are found in forests at high elevations and on sandy soils. Gymnosperms reproduce sexually and do not rely on water for reproduction. They have special structures for reproduction called cones. Pollen, which contains the male gamete, is dispersed by the wind into female cones where pollination takes place. The male gamete enters the female gamete through pollination tube for reproduction to take place. Gymnosperms means naked seed as the seeds are not enclosed or protected by a fruit. Angiosperms are seed-bearing plants that have vascular tissue, true leaves and well-developed roots. Angiosperms are able to survive in many environmental conditions, but it is essential that they are exposed to a good amount of sunlight. They reproduce asexually and sexually and do not require water for reproduction. They rely on pollinators such as insects and birds to transport their male gametes to the stigma of another plant so that fertilization can take place. Once on the stigma, the male gametes and the pollen grains descend towards the ovary through a pollen tube where it fuses with the female gamete so that reproduction can take place. After fertilization, the ovule develops into a seed and the ovary develops into a fruit, which encloses the seeds.
Abiotic factors affecting plant growth and reproduction. Water transports nutrients through plants so that they are able to grow, and it provides some plants like bryophytes with a medium for sperm so that reproduction can take place. Soil pH may affect the availability of plant nutrients, and so can affect their growth and reproduction. Light is needed for photosynthesis so that plants can grow. Without this process, plants also cannot reproduce. Wind is a pollinator for gymnosperms and therefore plays a role in its reproduction. Wind also affects the way in which plants grow, as in windy areas, plants will need to grow stronger roots and may be pushed in one direction. Plants are adapted to functioning at certain temperatures. Outside of these temperatures, plants may stop functioning and pollination for reproduction and growth will be prevented.